I began as a lawyer. I went to law school in LA, Loyola Law School, after graduating and from my undergrad career, so to speak. Uh, I was always intent on going to law school. I wanted to become a lawyer for a long time, and then I started the actual practice of law and realized I wanted to do something else immediately. He was using alcohol to decompress and deal with the pressure, and it's
Yeah.
something that continued on with him for many years thereafter. And then I was just your run-of-the-mill pothead, and the trouble that we had in relating to one another was just made worse by the fact that we were, one of us was an alcoholic and one of us was an addict.
Special thanks to our Patreon executive producer, Jonathan Capps, and our Patreon associate producers, Chris Knapp and Mark Zutkoff. Your leadership support helps keep the Transporter Room running at warp speed. And to all of our Patreon members at every level, we truly appreciate you. Your support helps power every episode, interview, and away mission. We couldn't do this without you. Greetings, everyone. I'm your host, Chris Garrish, joined today by my co-host, Allison Leach Hyde, and welcome back to the Transporter Room. We are absolutely honored to introduce a guest whose work has helped preserve the history and soul of the Star Trek franchise, the multi-talented Adam Nimoy. Adam is a director, filmmaker, and author known for his critically acclaimed documentary, For the Love of Spock, a beautiful tribute to the life and legacy of his father. He has recently expanded on that narrative with his movie memoir, The Most Human, Reconciling with My Father, Leonard Nimoy. Beyond his documentary work, Adam has a deep history with the franchise and a unique perspective on the stories that define it. Today, we're setting a course for 1986 as we primarily focus on Adam's love for Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. From the humpback whales to the transparent aluminum, we'll discuss why this film remains a pinnacle of the franchise and how Adam's work continues to celebrate the Star Trek legacy. Now let's beam in Adam. Hello. Thank you so much for coming on to join Alice and I today to talk about, Star Trek 4, your career and your legacy with this franchise. So I am so thankful to have you on here tonight.
So
Thank you.
excited.
Thank
Thank you
you,
for
guys.
joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, so before we dive into the actual movie, I'd actually just like to get, for our audience, I mean, there may be people that don't know this, but I'd like to. Could you tell us, your background and like how you? Because I know you were a lawyer at one point in your career, and then you transitioned from the lawyer to becoming a director and your author, and like your works, like documentaries and your books that you have written so far, and your new one as well.
Yes. Well, I began as a lawyer. I went to law school in LA, Loyola Law School, after graduating and from my undergrad career, so to speak. Uh, I was always intent on going to law school. I wanted to become a lawyer for a long time, and then I started the actual practice of law and realized I wanted to do something else immediately. I practiced for about 7 years. I was an entertainment attorney. I was working in a law firm for a while, and we represented my dad. In fact,
Wow.
during the some of the Star Trek features, we were representing him, and this is right around let's see, around 83, 84. So this would be before we got into Trek 4. But there was a lot of negotiating with Paramount going on, and because the movies were very much in gear at that point. Star Trek
Mhm.
pictures starting in I think they started production in '79 and came out in 1980. I was at a law firm, and then I went in house to work for a couple of record companies that disappeared, and it was tough, finding really good work in the industry. I did not want to be in a law firm. I was not really suited to that type of culture. And then I just decided that I went to, I went to an acting class with a guy named Jeff Corey. Now, Jeff was a guy who was, he was blacklisted during the 50s and early 60s for, being accused of being a communist sympathizer or
Oh
member of
wow.
the party. And when my dad came to LA in 1949, he was looking for ways to expand his craft and learn more about his acting craft. And he ended up in Jeff's acting class for many years, and then took over that class when Jeff finally got off the blacklist and started working in Hollywood in two of my favorite films from the '60s, Little Big Man and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Oh,
So I went to, he invited me while I was in between jobs in my legal career. He invited me to come out to Malibu and sit on a class of his. And that completely transformed me and changed my life. And I started having these discussions with my dad about wanting to make a career change because I really was not that excited about practicing law, but I was really
mhm,
excited about what was going on in that class with Jeff. And storytelling had always been, part of my tradition, my dad's tradition, clearly. And he was very helpful in helping me make the transition, and that's how I ended up on shadowing Nick Meyer around on Star Trek Six, and then getting shadowing directors around on the Next Generation.
mhm.
Thanks, to Rick Berman inviting me on to observe, and then finally got my first break directing a couple of Next Generation episodes.
Yeah, we both, Alice and I both watched all of those TNG episodes that are out there. So we're actually doing reviews of them right now with the seventh rule. So it's been fun. Well, that's good to know. I mean, like I said, I didn't know all of that. And so thank you for sharing that information with us. But, so now I just want to, I know you have written with two books now, correct?
Yeah,
Okay. So what's your newest one? When has your newest one come out yet?
it's entitled "The Most Human: Reconciling with My Father, Leonard Nimoy."
Hmm.
And that's a picture of me on the set with my dad.
Uh, oh,
Boom.
that's so cool.
That's one. You're wearing his exact ears, aren't you?
Yes, I'm wearing a pair of his ears. So they were shooting one of the episodes from the original series in the first season, "What Little Girls Are
Hmm.
Made Of."
Yeah.
Remember that one? It's an interesting episode. And while they were shooting a scene of my dad sitting in the captain's chair, they were rehearsing the scene when an assistant director came and grabbed me and said I was gonna go to the makeup room with Fred Phillips. Fred Phillips is the artist who helped create the look of Spock and the ears, and incredible guy, a real consummate professional, just a fabulous and an interesting guy. So
Hmm.
he sat me in the chair that he made up my dad in for 3 seasons of Star Trek, and he cut my hair and shaved my eyebrows, from which I never fully recovered. I don't know.
Oh no!
They never really grew back. And then he put on a
Oh,
pair of my dad's ears, oversized, but and he used this double stick tape to get him to stay on. And then while they were shooting the scene, I came out of the turbo lift and went over to say hello to my dad. I mean, it was like a lot of the whole point was to pull a prank on Leonard to get him out of character. That was kind of one of the objectives of
Oh.
everybody on the show, was to, because Leonard was known for staying in character on and off camera, and
Hmm.
so one of their ideas is to try to get him to break, a character and start laughing about pranks that they were constantly pulling on him, particularly Bill Shatner.
Oh, that's so cool. I did. So I think I remember. So I watched For the Love of Spock. I finished it again today because I hadn't watched it in a while, and I think that scene is in the movie with you coming out there.
Corbett discovers there are advancements. When I came to visit the set, they started shooting that first season at the end of May and early June in 1966. I was 9, almost 10 years old, and I was off for summer vacation. And this is why Dad would take me to work with him. I would get up early in the morning and we would drive to Desilu right next to the Paramount lot. And I'd be there all day.
It is. I mean, we have some still photographs from it that we pulled, frame grabs, really from the. But this is particularly from some slides that we had. Someone had a still camera, and they took some pictures of my dad and I in the Enterprise corridors after they broke for lunch after they finished that scene. So we have
Oh
some pretty good
wow.
pictures of that. But it's, this took place in July of '66, and this is before the series even aired. This is about 6 weeks before the series went on the air, and I just thought it would be kind of an appropriate photo, eye catching for the book, which is really about my journey. The book is really about my journey with my dad, the ups
Hmm.
and downs of being, Leonard's son, and the troubles we had and how we were able to finally reconcile through the powers of 12-step recovery. So I just thought the picture just was so emblematic of that time, of that period. It's my claim to fame as the first Trekkie and the first cosplay
That's
individuals.
true.
So
That's so true. You were the first cosplay.
I
Well,
love it. I just started listening to it recently, and I am really enjoying it. And I love hearing works and authors' voices. It makes it much more personal, I have to say. So I'm really enjoying it so far.
thank you so much. I mean, I really worked hard on it. I had editorial help to make sure, because there were a lot of ups and downs, a lot of challenges with between my dad and myself. Him being
mhm.
an admitted alcoholic, in the mind mailed interviews with Bill Shatner, he talked about how
Yeah.
how the original series, he was using alcohol to decompress and deal with the pressure, and it's
Yeah.
something that continued on with him for many years thereafter. And then I was just your run of the mill pothead, and the trouble that we had in relating to one another was just made worse by the fact that we were, one of us was an alcoholic and one of us was an addict, and it wasn't until we finally got into recovery and went
Mhm.
sober that we found ways to reconnect with one another.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. And it was amazing to listen to him admit that in the documentary. Like I mean, like you said,
Yeah,
he straight up said, and he, that was when he was talking to Bill.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
yeah. And I was like, wow. I mean, but, and I know we got into Star Trek 4 here, but real quick, but before we
Sure.
do that, but it seems like, I wonder, was that on the set a lot with other people, like a way of decompressing like that? Or, you know, I just wonder if that was a thing of the 60s, with people leaning towards alcohol for the stressors at that time.
Well,
I just don't know.
yeah, I can't speak to that at the time, but I can tell you this: that having
Mhm.
worked as a TV director for almost 10 seasons, the work is so high pressure, the hours are so long that there are a lot of people who are, using drugs and alcohol to
Yeah.
medicate and decompress. I mean, that industry is such a grind. At least it was when I was working in it. They were producing 22, 24 episodes a season.
Mhm.
It's a long haul of very hard work, and it's 12 to 14-hour days on the set. So
Yeah.
a lot of people that I knew,
Yeah.
besides myself, were using and drinking to help deal with the
Mhm.
pressure of the day. So I don't think it's that uncommon.
Yeah. No, that's when I
Exactly.
hear the, go, Allison. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say exactly. I mean, that is a ton of pressure. And dealing with that is hard. And I think a lot of people to this day still do that. I mean, we're not out of people needing to decompress and not knowing how best to do it for them sometimes.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think
there's
that's
healthy
right.
ways to do it, and
Mhm.
as John Lennon says, whatever gets you through your life. I mean, it's not a judgment thing. People do
Yeah.
what they need to do.
Yeah.
It just stopped working for my dad. It stopped working for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and we had to find healthier ways to deal with that, with the pressures of day-to-day living. So,
Yeah.
it's not surprising that my dad would turn to alcohol. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
You have to understand Star Trek, as he talked about in the documentary, that was the first time he had a job that lasted more than 2 weeks.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And the production season's like 10 months long, and Spock's in almost every scene, so
Yeah.
it's it's very, and then on the weekends, my dad was off making personal appearances all over the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very, very difficult, lifestyle
Yeah.
choice to be in the industry. It's very challenging.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Not a lifestyle I think I could do. So, but I'm glad there are people that do it for us so that we could, and I'm glad they did this 60 years ago because so that way we are sitting able to have these discussions now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so so I'm gonna go ahead, we're gonna, because, what got us together was, the Star Trek 4,
Mhm.
because it is the 40th anniversary of this movie, which your dad directed. And it's, for me, it's 2, 4, and 6 are my favorite movies, of course. And it's a 2-4 is like always, depending upon the day, which one I'm in the mood for, but comes to my favorite. Um, but it's a timeless movie. I have watched it numerous times. Allison's watched it numerous times. I'm betting you've probably watched it more than once. And I'm just curious, so like, what does that movie mean to you right now? Or just means to you?
Well, Chris, it's interesting you say 2, 4, and 6 because the common thread between 2, 4, and 6 is none other than my good friend Nicholas Meyer.
Yep.
And yeah, and the script was written by Nick Meyer and Harv Bennett. The two of them
Hmm.
really, took it apart and then put it back together. So I think those are the guys who are the real heroes that really started developing. I mean, my dad and Harv Bennett came up with the idea, the story ideas, and this was from talking to other scientists and other people and stuff that was
Hmm.
going on in the press about the ecosystem on planet Earth. So I love the film because at that point Dad had some experience from Star Trek 3, so he kind of knew what he was doing. He really had his directing legs, his sea legs, and was really up on the craft of directing and being in front and behind the camera, which is really complicated to do. I mean, I remember my dad was sick a lot of the time while he was shooting that film because it was just so damn demanding. But it is my favorite. 4 is my favorite of that part of the franchise of the first 6 films with the original cast,
Hmm.
and it's because of the writing is so good, it's so well written, and Nick's dialogue is so ridiculously funny, and Harv's stuff is great.
Yeah.
And it's just it's well shot, it's well edited. My dad did a great job in directing. I mean, Leonard's whole philosophy was if you work hard enough in prep, that's where it really is at. That's where the movie is made when you're in pre-production, so that when you get
Hmm.
on the set, you can sit back and enjoy watching performances all day. That was his philosophy for me. If you prepped enough on the shows that I worked on as a director, then I should be able to sit back and enjoy great performance all day long and relax a little bit. But the thing is that I learned, and that I think my dad knew this as well, is that the more you prep the movie, then the more you're able to deal. You can deal with issues that are going to come up on production that you can deal with in prep. A lot of the stuff you can take care of and anticipate. That's the whole point, is trying to anticipate all of the curveballs that come your way during the course of production. There's always stuff that happens.
Hmm.
And once you're able to deal with most of those, then you open yourself up and you have the time to deal with happy accidents. And a lot of that was happening as well when they were shooting Star Trek 4. A lot of things would happen on the set. It's just serendipitously, and that a good director could see and then take advantage of. So, I mean, for all the elements just really fell into place with that particular film.
Completely agree. I've grown up watching that one so many times. And this last rewatch, it happened to be that my 10-year-old walked in the room and he went, "What are you watching?" And it was right when we got to the whales. And I mean, he's 10 years old and loves dragons. So of course he's gonna be completely smitten with the whale. So he did sit down and watch the entire movie with me. Like, nope, I'm gonna watch this. He might have been slightly bedtime procrastinating, which is fair.
Yeah.
I was going to let him do that because, I mean, this is a perfect way to come in to love Star Trek, I have to say.
Well, yeah, I can see you're wearing a George and Gracie T-shirt also, by the way,
I
Allison.
did.
Yeah,
I did thought
that's
I would
terrific.
celebrate with this.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that looks like it's vintage.
it's brand new, actually,
Oh,
but it
okay.
does look completely vintage. It's the color. So, I have a question about working with the wonderful Nick Myers. This was the first time you worked with him. What did you learn about filmmaking and storytelling from him during this whole situation?
Well, I was on Star Trek 6,
Mhm,
The Undiscovered Country, which he wrote and directed. I learned a lot about filmmaking. My dad was exec producer, and
mhm.
he's the guy who told Nick to bring me on board. I just shadowed Nick around. Nick didn't pay
Oh,
any attention to me. He was
okay.
so yeah, he was so busy, doing his thing. It's very difficult dealing with the
Mhm,
studio and dealing, with your stars and the production
mhm.
personnel and the pre-production and the casting and
Yes.
the special effect. Nick had no time for me. I mean, Nick had me running out and buying him, operas at Tower Records. He wanted to
Tower
listen to some.
Records.
Yeah, he sent me to Tower Records to buy CDs of operas that he enjoyed, or
All right.
cigars. I remember running out and trying to find cigars for Nick. I was doing stupid stuff like that. But while I was on set, I spent a lot of time, just watching, and I had
Mhm,
a lot of time with my dad. Or a lot of moments where he would take me aside and tell me what was going on, and the good stuff that was happening and the not so good stuff that was happening. I learned a lot about
mhm,
just the decorum on the set and about the importance of the cinematographer.
Yes.
On Star Trek Six, it was Hiro Narita, a guy I had known
Mhm.
before. We had a chance meeting in San Francisco, in fact, years before. So, Faye Brenner was script supervisor, and Gino Canamesa was the sound mixer. These are all the people I really learned from,
Mhm. Okay,
because
cool.
they had more time to relax and
Mhm.
sit back while Nick had to work the magic of making the films,
Yeah.
and that's where I
Mhm.
really learned a lot about the art of filmmaking, and what the importance of the crew, and who's who on the crew. Was
Mhm.
that those kind of things.
Awesome. What stood out to you the most about watching your dad direct himself? That can't be an easy thing for anyone to do.
Well, I wasn't on the set that much for
Mhm.
Star Trek 4, although we were there because they were on location quite a bit.
Mhm.
And we did see him directing when they were in the tank in when the bird of prey lands in the San Francisco Bay.
Mhm.
So
Uh-huh.
we were there for that, and he
Cool.
was not feeling well, and he had to be in and out of the water.
Oh no.
That was quite a sight. I mean, it's just it was really interesting watching him, get through it and get the film that he needed. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a real slog sometimes, very challenging to get all the elements together, particularly when you're dealing with the tank and the water and the bird of prey
Yes.
and the
Mhm.
actors, and you're not there to watch it. You have to rely. He had to rely quite a bit
Mhm.
on Don Peterman, who was the
Okay.
cinematographer,
Yeah.
and very great at what he did. So you really have to. They didn't have video playback then, so you really couldn't see everything that he was getting.
Oh.
Okay.
It was just, and my dad was a very collaborative
Mhm.
director. He was very hands-on with the actors and talking with them
Mhm.
about, what their needs are, that's the great thing about being an actor's director, is that he has a sense of and that's why I was in Jeff Corey's class,
Mhm.
coincidentally, is to learn something
Okay.
about the acting class, to understand what the actors, issues are, what their concerns are, what their needs are, what their problems are.
Mhm.
And so you can be collaborative in helping them work through all these issues together, and have some knowledge and understanding of this stuff. That's critical, and that's, I think, the
Mhm.
unique talent that any actor
Mhm.
who stands behind the camera and is directing people brings to the table, that's unique.
Ask. Okay.
Right.
So you said something, and it's a question I have always wanted to ask somebody, and that may know this answer. So in that scene when the bird of prey is in the bay, and Kirk is trying to pull your dad, or pull Spock into the bay. I'm telling you, it looks like in that scene he was actually did not want to be pulled into that water tank.
No, I think, yeah, that was typical Bill Shatner, prank
Mhm.
pulling. I'm not sure it was
Okay.
scripted. It probably wasn't. It was, it's them playing around at that moment. Yeah, I mean, look, it was a complicated day. It was unbelievable to watch all that going on, and that kind of stuff happened, quite a bit, on the
Hmm.
set, behind the scenes. Bill was a major prankster. He was always doing stuff like, there's this whole thing about the bicycle. That on the original series, there was this running joke about Bill hiding my dad's bike, because when they called for lunch on the original series, it was like, who could get to the commissary first, because they had a very short time to get in line and get their food, and eat. And then my dad had to go back to the office and deal with fan mail and personal appearance offers and all of these kind of things. So they would ride their bikes down to the commissary at the Desilu lot, and Bill was always like hiding my dad's bike, putting it in his trunk of his car, or
What?
putting it in his dressing room where he had his Doberman pinchers, like guarding it, or stringing it up to the rafters on the set.
Oh no.
Bill
Oh
was
my
always
god.
doing that kind of stuff.
Personally, I don't know about you. I have never heard about those pranks like that.
Yeah, that was just kind of like part of the. It just, I don't know. Everybody's trying to find the joke. We do that when I was directing with on all these TV episodes. I mean, people
Mhm.
are always looking to break up the intensity of the moment,
Mhm.
of the pressure, the long
Mhm.
hours. Having some fun and some comic relief is really helpful in those situations.
Oh God, that's
Agreed.
agreed. And that now I am so thankful I've always wondered that, and now you've at least given me an answer to my mind to fix my answer, because I swear every time he's dragging him off of that
He's
bird of prey, and he's like,
pulling
"No,
really
I
hard.
don't want to go." So
Yeah, not scripted.
cool. Oh, well, thank you. So So now what my real question was going to be, and I don't know if you know this, but, and I did not realize this until we were doing our review, is that the captain of the Saratoga was actually the first on-screen female captain. Was that in the script, or did someone, or like, how did that happen? Like, was it by
Yeah.
design?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that too, and they make, in a lot of the reviews, they make comment on that as well. I think that that woman is the first female starship captain that is
Mhm.
seen within the Star Trek franchise. So
Yes.
it wouldn't surprise me if that was a preconceived idea on their part. I mean, this is, the whole point of Star Trek is to be inclusive and,
True.
infinite diversity and infinite combinations. So I
Hmm.
think that was the natural order of things, that there would be a woman in command. We see this repeatedly, in the spin-off series thereafter,
Hmm.
and we're seeing it now even with this Starfleet Academy
Yep.
new iteration with Holly Hunter. So it's not surprising that it showed up, but that was probably something that was preconceived. I couldn't tell
Mhm.
you, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. No, I figure. I just, you're the closest person we know to that, other than Nick Meyer, that might have any clue to that. So,
Right.
And I don't remember if that's in his book or not. I'd have to go back and
Yeah,
check
I
it
don't
out.
either. I don't remember either.
So, why do you think the Voyage Home still resonates so much with fans after? I can't believe that it's been 40 years, but again, I have a hard time with how old I am. So, it's not surprising the age of the film is a shock to me at times.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the film is that they really were trying to do something different than the typical bad villain situation. I mean, there is no singular villain. They
Mhm.
were really expanding about the film seems to appeal to people because it resonates in terms of the very distinctive characters who have a real connection with one another. There's an ecological message to it. I mean, Gene Roddenberry once said that my dad was sort of like the social conscience of Star Trek, is that, and so was Gene. I mean, that's the whole
Mhm.
point of this positive view of the future where people are working together to solve common problems, and that, it seemed to appeal to the humor, seemed to appeal to people. I mean, there's a lot of that in there. Again, it's Harv and a lot of Nick Meyer. That's just the way Nick thinks, and he's a very funny guy. I think a lot of him comes out in that film,
hmm
and just and the comic timing, I think, of Dad and Bill Shatner, really,
Yes.
and Dee and the whole cast, really, they knew
Mhm.
that they were playing the joke in a large part. You know, uh, Scotty trying to talk his way into the computer. Stuff like that. I mean, it's a lot of anachronisms. It's really, really, it's just a lighthearted view of Star Trek, and I think that really appealed to people. I mean, it
Mhm.
appealed to them in the day. I mean, it was the highest grossing film, over 100 million, domestic box office. It was a huge, successful film, and I think knocked out Crocodile Dundee, which was the number one film up until that, which is also a
Oh.
fabulous film,
Yeah.
also a Paramount film, and also the
Hmm.
fish out of water thing is something that
Mhm.
really resonates with people. Is like, people who are in an environment that they're not necessarily used to, and that's
Hmm.
the case of having the crew go back in time, and Crocodile Dundee and civilization,
Yeah.
in an urban center. So, all these things, and it's just really likable character, very distinctive,
Mhm.
likable characters who clearly like and even love each other and
Yeah.
play off of each other. All these elements just seem to be there. It's just also a well-directed film. I mean, the
Yes.
craftsmanship is amazing. The way it was shot, and it's beautifully shot. It's beautifully edited. The pacing is great. The
Mhm.
timing is great. There's not that much that where like I'm looking at my watch. I
Mhm.
love
Yeah.
so much of it just moves along at a great pace,
Hmm.
and the performances. Catherine Hicks is fabulous. I just love her. The
Mhm.
reconciliation of Spock and Sarek really resonated with me.
Yes.
That's art imitating life. That was me and my dad right down the line. There's so many elements, and some just great set design,
Mhm.
great work with the art director. I think it was Nilo Rodis was, I think, on that one, and ILM's work. The
Yeah.
special effects work is excellent, and there's all these cameos. We have Majel Barrett in there. We have Grace Lee Whitney in there.
Hmm.
We have Brock Peters in there, a good friend of my dad's. I love him as as Admiral Cartwright, I think is his character's
Yep.
name,
Yep.
Bob Ellenstein, who's the president of the
Yes.
Federation Council, is in, and John Schuck is freaking amazing as the Klingon ambassador. You got all
Yes.
so many things going. It's just it's
Hmm.
and great little moments too. The thing with Kirk Thatcher on the bus, playing the punk rocker. I think that's just freaking
Punk on
hilarious.
the
So
bus. Yes.
Well, and
exactly,
then
punk on the
they
bus.
brought him back, and then they brought him back in Picard.
Exactly.
I
So
mean, oh yeah, it's well, and I mean, you're right. All of the timing and the comedic part of it when he's like, well, I think he did a little too much LDS. I'm like,
yeah, and do you like Italian food? No, yes, no. He loves Italian food. No, yes, no.
Yeah.
I mean,
The
it's
whole
just
who's on first bit was
yeah,
wonderful in the pickup
exactly,
truck. It was
exactly.
beautiful.
Yeah, I love all that. I mean, it's just a fabulous film. It still resonates. It still holds up.
oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
and
think I want to say of all of them, I think that one holds up the most. I think so.
I do too.
Just with,
Yeah,
you know,
mhm, I would have
nothing
to agree.
comes across as like, ooh, that's a product of its time where it kind of makes you cringe and go, have to remember when this was filmed. I don't feel that watching this movie in any way, shape, or form. So
right.
Well, I'll
yeah.
say before you move on, I felt a lot of nostalgia watching that movie. I mean, seeing the yellow pages behind, Bones and Scotty when and then you cut to her and Chekhov actually using a phone book
Yeah,
and you have a telephone booth, a payphone, which there's people that are going to be watching this podcast that
And
will have no clue what a
yeah.
payphone is.
Well, also the serendipity element of it. Like one example, I was just reading this because I was looking at some of the history of it. That woman they bump into when they say, we're looking for nuclear vessels in
Assholes.
Alameda, and they stop a pedestrian on the street, and she says, "Oh, I don't know if I can help you with that. I think it's in Alameda." Yes, Alameda. That's what I said. And that woman was like ad libbing. She was apparently the story behind her. Her name was like Layla something. She had her car towed because of the production, and she didn't see the sign, and she
yep.
went to the AD to see if she could be an extra in the film to earn the money that she needed to get her car out of the impound. And there she is, ad-libbing this. They had to put her into SAG and pay her, but they
Mhm.
liked what she did so much, and
Yes.
what she did is freaking hilarious.
Oh, it's
So,
so
and
funny.
yeah,
It is
little things
wonderful.
like that, and a lot of that was coming up with Catherine Hicks also, who's just
Mhm.
so freaking amazing in this film on so
Yeah.
many levels. She's so interesting.
Mhm.
These little things that you look for, and a
Mhm.
lot of these things were happening because everybody was on board to make
Mhm.
a good. Everybody was getting along, and they were all determined to make a good film.
Mhm.
It's wonderful. So, do you have a favorite memory during filming of this? Be it, you know, if it ended up on screen or not.
Well, I think my favorite. I mean, I saw only some of it, but when they were trying to in the council, I saw that scene being shot with John Schuck, who I just
Mhm.
that I thought he was phenomenal.
He
Oh yeah.
was.
And he was so good in that scene, and the scene with Sarek and my dad. I really
Mhm.
appreciated that. But I think and again, I wasn't there for much of it, but
Mhm.
the thing that really impressed me was being in the tank at Paramount. I'd never seen them flood that tank before. I mean, the blue sky is there permanently, but it's like, what's
Yep.
it for? And the
Yes.
other thing was that around that where that tank is was the scene dock where they did a lot of store. There was a lot. It was a storage facility.
Okay.
There was a lot of flats that were just sets that were being stored. But the interesting thing about that is this is before they created the Gene Roddenberry building is built right next to it now. And we were
Oh,
back there a
really?
few years later. I'm trying to remember what year they dedicated it, because several years later we were back there in that same location to dedicate that building to Gene, who was still alive back then. So,
Mm.
there's just a
See,
lot of history with the lot at Paramount.
think season 3 of Next Gen because I'm pretty sure
Possible.
Gates was back for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it
So
was when Next Gen was on the air because they were
yeah,
there. A lot of those people were there.
yeah. So I
Mhm.
remember her being in the photo. So I think it was season 3,
Yeah.
like right at the beginning. I think.
Mhm. And it's a shame now. I mean, I've never been to Paramount lot, but I've heard stories. I've heard the people that go there, and it's from what I hear now, it's just a ghost town there now on the lot.
The entertainment industry, the film industry, the TV industry is going through a lot of changes right now. We're quite in transition now. It
Yeah.
just so happens that my daughter is an executive at CBS Paramount.
Okay.
So,
Oh.
and I talked to her about this, and she's like, "No, all of our stuff is out of town. There's just nothing
Mhm.
going on here. A lot of people are out of work. It's been a very difficult time. So, I mean, a lot of studios, the lots are empty.
Yeah.
And Paramount being one of them. I mean, hopefully things will turn around at some point. I mean, it is cyclical, but it
Yeah.
doesn't look like it's going to happen very soon. I mean, it's a very sad situation for a lot of talented people in this town who simply are not working.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we've
totally
now
agree.
got 2 film studios running in Albuquerque now.
Not surprising. There's a lot of other.
Netflix films a lot of things here.
Yeah. Okay. That would make sense. Yeah. I was just in
Yeah.
Albuquerque. That's why I was in Santa Fe. I had to go to make an appearance to promote my book. And I mean, and I loved, being in Albuquerque, and
Mhm.
they're the ones who said I need to go to Santa Fe for the day. And,
Yeah.
which was a phenomenal experience on a lot of levels. But, yeah, a lot of film is in Canada. There's a lot of stuff
Mhm.
overseas. My daughter's running a lot of shows in Vancouver and
Yeah.
Toronto. It's just the way the industry is right now. It's pretty unfortunate. Whether it'll change and then it'll come back,
Mhm.
I don't know, because it just reverberates across the economy. And in Southern California, I mean, there's a lot of secondary industries that rely on the film industry, and that's like limo services and catering services and
Mhm.
party planners and restaurants and dry cleaners. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
the ripple effect is everywhere in this
Mhm.
city. So it's a tough
Yeah.
go right
That's
Yes.
definitely a tough go. That's what I hear. We've had Dave Blass and Liz
Mhm.
Kukowski on, and yeah, that's what they say. It's real tough right now and out
Yeah,
there.
they
So
both filmed things here in the Santa Fe area.
correct.
What's
Yeah.
that? Say again,
They
Elsie?
both filmed,
Oh,
worked on shows here.
oh, interesting. Yeah,
Longmire was here,
yeah.
and, uh, she did Godless, I believe,
Mhm.
if I remember, and both wonderful shows.
Hmm. Uh,
Yeah, real contraction of the industry here. That's why I'm
Mhm.
so grateful. I'm so lucky that my daughter is still working. I mean, she's
Yeah.
been at Paramount for 8 or 9 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's survived a number of of
Mhm.
bloodbaths where a lot of people were fired.
Yeah.
It's really a difficult situation for a lot of people, and they have to find new
Mhm.
careers. I mean, it's a godsend that she's still there, but she's obviously doing a good enough job. I mean, that's the
Mhm.
thing. There is nepotism. She did get her first job on an J.J. Abrams show called Person of Interest that was shooting in New
Oh,
York.
yeah.
Yeah, and she was a PA. She got a PA gig with the help of my dad and JJ,
Mhm.
got her started. But she really worked her way up through the
Mhm.
ranks,
mhm.
and has proven her worth. And is very good
Yep.
at what she does. So
Exactly.
and she has a real passion for what she's doing, and she's just good at it. She's just good at producing,
Mhm.
and working with
Wonderful.
producers and
Mhm.
yeah, and she's a production executive. But this is the thing: is like she really, if she has to say no, it's for a reason. And she understands what their priorities are and what the problems are of the creative side. And if there's something that she feels is worth fighting for, she'll find the money to make it happen. And that's what's wonderful about the industry. Sometimes it really is a collaborative art form where people are
Mhm.
all working together to make stuff work. On
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
other hand, my dad would say it's not a meritocracy, and sometimes you have to have the sharpest elbows in Hollywood to get people out of your way. And
Yeah.
you fail upward as well.
Mhm.
He would say it's not a brotherhood.
Mhm.
Mhm.
A lot of times when my dad would say to me as a director, if you're going to have a problem on the set, don't count on the producers to bail you out. A lot of
Yeah.
times they won't do it. They're not going to throw you a life raft. They're going to throw you an anchor, and
Mhm.
Oh.
let you sink, because a lot of times there's a lot of dysfunction in the industry, and my dad faced that a lot on his own. A lot of
Mhm.
conflict,
Yeah.
that sometimes goes on with people because everybody has their own agenda. But when everything's clicking, which is
Mhm.
what I think happened on Star Trek 4, and it happened the following year on 3 Men and a Baby, everything was clicking
Oh,
yeah, and that's why, and you see it in the film, you just see it,
Yep.
that people are
so
digging it and they're loving what they're doing and the talent's
Yes.
getting along and it's on the screen when it's all happening. I had that
Yep.
experience myself directing TV shows. Sometimes it's freaking
yeah.
misery and I can't wait for it to be over. And sometimes it's like we kicked ass every single day of production and you see it in the show.
Mhm.
Oh,
Well, I didn't know that your dad
yeah.
directed 3 Men and a Baby, and I love that movie. So now, I mean, now I understand why it's such a good. Well, the actors were good, but it was such a
Mhm.
good movie, and you feel like, like you said, it when a cast is having fun, it comes through the screen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean,
Period.
yeah, it's pretty clear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so.
everything was working really well on that show, and everything was working well on 4. Again, this is the whole point. It's like,
Yeah.
that the crew of the Enterprise, I think they all had a good time, and
Mhm,
everybody, got to, kind of express their character, and everything was written really well for them all, and it's just I don't know. It's just they were just really there was a lot of serendipity. It was a very very lucky,
mhm,
shoot. But again, it starts with the writing. Frankly, it does.
Mhm.
It really does start with the script. My dad would say this all the time. It's all about story. In the end, it's all about story,
Yes.
and that's where Nick and Harv really shine. They really, their talent is really, clearly there to begin with. And my
mhm,
dad just basically took the ball that he handed off to, that they handed off to him and ran with it. So we were really lucky, and I've just recently become more friendly with Nick. I mean, Nick and I've kind of discovered each other over the past couple of years. He's like finding a long lost uncle. He's so
Yes.
yeah. I just so admire him and the work that he has
Mhm.
produced, and saving the franchise with Wrath of Khan,
Yes.
yes.
and just being around Nick because he's just he just turned 80 and he's still eminently entertaining.
Mhm,
I go to his house sometimes and hang out, and he's just a trip. I just love the guy, and he's such a reflection of so much going on in popular culture and history and literature. He's had so many interests.
Mhm.
He has so much talent, and it's just the chemistry of him and Harv Bennett is really shines through. I think in that
mhm.
film.
Well, and as you said, when I told you my 3 favorite movies are 2, 4, 6,
Yeah,
that answers that question
yeah,
because that was a great team,
Mhm.
of writers and everything, and so and that's why I just wanted to say, it's not really a question, it's just a statement that the fact that when they wrote it in for, Spock to stand with the accused when he didn't have to
right.
is just, you know, great. I mean, there's no words for it. The fact that he didn't have to do it, and he's like, "I stand with my shipmates."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, Jane Wyatt, who plays Amanda's mother. I mean, those early scenes with
Yes.
her, I think she's
Wonderful.
are just fabulous. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of issues, moral issues. That's what
Mhm.
Star Trek's about: is making decisions, taking chances, doing the right thing. I mean, it's all there in that film. I mean, Nick pointed out it's interesting in some of the commentary that they were a little troubled by some of the philosophy, which was basically don't worry about letting the humpbacks go extinct. Someone in the future is going to save you by bringing them back to the present. That was a dubious message because they would rather be saying, you know what, just take care of the freaking whales and you wouldn't have this problem.
I mean, as a kid, I didn't see that as we need somebody from the future to come rescue us. It was a reminder of if we save ourselves now, they don't have to come back and
Mhm.
save us. So we should save ourselves now.
Yeah,
It would be easier.
there's that point of view too. That's true
Yeah.
too. It's a warning.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, and I had forgotten, and Allison mentioned it during our review. I had forgotten about those whaling scenes that they had recorded of them
Yeah.
to the slaughter. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I forgot about that."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fabulous. I mean, a lot of social conscience in there, and
Mhm.
you know yeah, that's why it's a message movie, and I think that's another reason why it still continues to resonate.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Oh, all right. I
Definitely
think we're gonna
agreed.
move from the movie for a minute because someone has some TNG questions for you.
I don't even know if it's really a TNG question. I just wanted you to know
Oh,
that Timescape in Next Generation is one of my all-time favorite episodes. And I just wanted to know what stood out most for you about directing that because I love time, weird time travel pockets type things.
Hmm.
And I thought you did a wonderful job with this episode. And
Oh, thank you.
any little stories you have about directing it would be wonderful for me personally.
Well, look, I just had a great script to begin
Yeah.
with, and I prepped it as best I could, and and the cast was very good to me and patient with me. It was only my second episode.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm so grateful that you say that because
Mhm.
it was that particular episode was very challenging, and the reason for that is that I think we were near the end of the season when that
Yes.
episode aired. Yeah, well, here was the challenge is that when you get to the end of the season, everybody is burned out,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and you're dealing with a burned out crew and a burned out cast. And this is also they've been in it. I think this is season 4 or 5, of
Six.
TNG. 6.
Six.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
they've been in it a long time now, and it was very challenging for me as a new
Mhm.
director because I'm still making some novice mistakes, which is common practice. I mean that's just the way it is. And I got into a lot of trouble periodically on that show. Yeah, because I was making these sophomore mistakes, and
Mm.
people were tired and hungry, angry, tired, lonely, whatever. Halt, hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. And so there was a lot of we had changed cinematographers, so it was I was dealing with Jonathan West, who was really a great he was fabulous for the show. But I
Mhm.
had trained under Marvin Rush. It was Marvin
Yes.
who I really knew well.
Oh.
I had sat through
Mhm.
an entire season of season 4 with Marvin, but
Yeah.
he
Mhm.
moved on to do Deep Space Nine.
Deep space. Yeah.
So,
Correct.
I mean, it was very challenging for me. It was a very difficult
Mhm.
show for me to make, but I'm glad that you felt that it paid. I think it's a decent episode, and I'm really
Mhm.
grateful that I had the opportunity to go back and do that. It wasn't until I made the Outer Limits episode with my dad, which was my third show, that I
Oh,
really started to feel much more confident and
okay.
came into my own as a TV director. I just really did not know
Mhm.
what I was doing on those two TNG episodes, and
Mhm.
I had to rely on them a lot to carry
Mhm.
me through. And I'm lucky that they, that Jonathan and his crew, and then the, and the cast were willing
Mhm.
to, help me along,
Yeah.
to get through that episode.
Well, you mentioned the Outer Limits episode with your dad. What was it like directing your dad? Because this is the second time he did this story, because he did
Right.
iRobot in the first
Yeah,
iteration of
well,
the show too.
this a time when when my dad and I were doing well with each other. We were
Mhm.
getting along before we had to deal with with the issues of our addiction.
Okay.
uh, and my dad is the one who made this job. I mean, he was looking for another job after Star Trek. It's hard
Mhm.
to get another gig. I mean, Star Trek
Mhm.
is not a network, not one
No.
of the three top network shows. It was on the Paramount Network at the time. And I was trying to figure out a way to get another directing gig. And my dad is the one who came to me and said, "Look, they're restarting The Outer
Mhm.
Limits on Showtime. Go to the producers and tell them that you'll, if they'll let you direct an episode, we'll remake this episode that my dad was a
Um,
guest star
okay.
in, had a supporting role in, the
Mhm.
iRobot episode from the original series, which was one of my favorite episodes anyway."
Yeah.
And they bought it. The producers were like, "Yeah, well, let's do it." We had a lot of issues on that. A
Mhm.
lot of script problems going into
Mm.
that, and but my dad and I, did a very quick rewrite on everything, and we collaborated on that, and he came up and he was very helpful to me, very helpful behind the scenes. That's what really brought me into my own. He would say things to me off to the side without embarrassing me in front of the whole cast and crew by
Mhm.
saying things. He'd say like, "Look, don't shoot two sizes. Just do the master and push in
Mhm.
on me in the courtroom you're going to be tight on me at the end of the speech anyway. Just do a push in at this moment.
Mhm.
You know when you're going to be tight. Just combine
Yep.
two shots. You're going to save yourself some time and get out of the trouble that you're in now, because we
Okay.
got to we got to keep." He'd say stuff like that to me, and then I would
Oh,
go
wow.
back and I would give some time, let some time go back, and I'd say, "Hey, you know what? We're going to make a change here. Let's just
Yeah.
combine these two shots." And just on this line, just dolly into Leonard and do a
Mhm.
close up on him, and then we're going to finish the scene that way, and then we're going to move on and get something else because we've
Mhm.
got to keep. We're getting behind here.
Yep.
Stuff like that would happen all the time.
Mhm. Awesome.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. I've got two questions here that came from our Patreon members, two of them, and the one is from Jonathan Caps. He just was curious to know, from your perspective as a director yourself, what your thoughts and impressions are between how Leonard Nimoy grew as a director between Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 4.
Well, my dad himself said it. I mean, on Star Trek 3, he had they had a tight leash on him.
Yep.
Was Jeff Katzenberg was head of production, and my dad had to account to them for everything, and had to go to them and get their approval for everything. I mean,
Hmm.
stay on budget and stay on time. And it was after that that Jeff said, the training wheels are off, quote unquote. This is my dad's quote. We
Hmm.
want you to make your Star Trek movie. So, look, the fact is that my dad didn't have that much experience going into Star Trek 3, and he started directing some episodes of TV shows. I think he did a TJ Hooker, in fact, Bill Shatner
Oh.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Powers of Matthew Starr and a couple of other things to kind of get his directing legs. Look, I know from experience, it takes a while to really get it. You don't know what's going on until you're actually in the driver's
Mhm.
seat. And my dad had been around, these, directors and production for quite some time, being in Star Trek and the other shows that he did. But it's not until you actually sit in the director's chair that you really get a sense of what it's all about, and the demands of that job, that craft,
Hmm.
really become very, apparent to you very quickly. So I think he really needed Trek 3 to get to get himself up to speed on what it was going to, what was going to be required of him. And I think it really shows that he was much more
Mhm.
confident in what he was
Oh,
doing
God.
in Star Trek 4. I felt the same way.
Yeah.
One of the things I learned when I was teaching, in fact, in the film school, is that, and my dad and I discussed this a lot. It's like, when 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 you are tired, you are hungry, and you really need a bathroom break, that is when the assistant director says these words: roll camera. And that's when you have to be on it, you know. The
Yep.
concentration, you have got to be on it, and
Hmm.
that and that is something that I learned by the experience, and my dad really knew and understood intuitively. An amazing amount of concentration involved, and Leonard was really up to the task. I think that's what he really brought to that film
Mhm.
at that point in
Hmm.
time.
Oh, absolutely. You can tell between 3 and 4, it's just it's a very obvious change that he knew what he was doing by that second film. It just, and like you said, they took the train wheels off and let him do it. And
Yeah,
that was just,
much more bold in terms of. I mean, there was a
Yeah.
lot of really good camera work. There was a lot of good direction in 3. There was a lot of
Yeah.
great stuff, very
mhm,
innovative stuff. Very out
yes.
of the ordinary. That's just my dad's sensibility. That was always my sensibility, being a guy from the comic book age.
Mhm.
Just putting the camera at weird angles, but he really pushed the envelope. With 4, he was really doing more stuff that was interesting, innovative, and out of the box, really.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, and my last Patreon question is from Mark Zutkoff. He wanted to know what techniques, technical, working with the actors, post production, anything, did you learn in your two Star Trek: The Next Generation directorial outings that helped you on other genre shows you directed, such as Babylon 5, Sliders, or Hercules?
Well, I think the most important thing that I learned is that when possible, I think the most important thing that had the most effect on people, particularly with, I think, the cast and crew, was that, and my dad also, I discussed this a lot with him, is that I wasn't a big on the monitor. Now you have a monitor, they call it Video Village. You sit and
Mhm.
watch the monitor, which is the feed from the live feed from what the camera is saying. And
Mhm.
if it's a complicated shot, you need to look at the monitor, to make sure that everything is going the way you planned it. Is that the camera moves are executed the way you plan it. But if the camera is static on a two shot or an over on a couple of actors having a conversation, I never watch the monitor. I stand by the camera, and that's something
Mhm.
I learned from my dad, and that's something I would teach my students too. I think that's the most important thing, because then it's like you're there with them. You're seeing the
Mhm.
truth is in their eyes. You can see really what's happening in terms of performance. That's what it's all about. And I was on a show with an actor who had a real reputation for being difficult. But when
Mhm.
he saw that I was watching him instead of watching the TV from halfway off the set, excuse
Yep.
my French,
No worries.
he was really impressed by that. And most actors love that. They want to know that you're there really observing them and trying to get, a sense of where they're at, with the scene and what the scene is about, and if their intent is coming through, their objectives are coming through. And then you can stand with them and collaborate with them. I mean, I love, but never being in their sight line, staying the hell away. And I would hide behind the camera operator while I was watching this, and I would let the actors know I'm going to be standing here watching, and if you think it's distracting, let me know. And most of them would say, "No, we want you there. We need you there," because then you're collaborating with them, and I can give notes right away. And that's the other thing is that actors, it's really it's story, performance, and then all the technique of filmmaking in that order. So I'm a performance guy. I really love collaborating with actors because I am my father's son, and I really like being there with them. And that's the other thing that I learned about being in Jeff's classes. They want short, specific, concise notes. And if they're cooking when you watch a rehearsal, then I don't say a freaking thing. I just go, and sometimes they would look at me, the actors would say, "What do you, any notes?" I go, "No, shoot it." And the other thing that's really important is even if I have a plan and that they do something that's better, or the cinematographer has an idea that's better, be willing to take your plan and dump it in the trash file and go with what's happening. And that's another thing I learned with my dad. You have to have this, flexibility. You've got to have a plan. You've got to have a plan. But if there's something else that's happening in front of you, either with the camera that's going on or the actors have a different idea, you've got to be able to go with it. And the first, my dad would always say these words, even when he thought it was a ridiculous idea, he'd say these two words: "Let's try it." 3 words: "Let's try it. Let's try it." Because oftentimes my dad would say to me, if it's a bad idea, it will become readily apparent to everybody. But if you let people feel that they have some creative input, then you have their confidence for the rest of the show.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I believe that because I've heard several other Star Trek actors say that that some of the directors just didn't want to listen to them if they thought a scene wasn't right or something, and they had an idea of maybe how to make it work better for their character. Some would listen, and others were like, "Okay, just like you said, let's try it." But
well, I mean, you have a time problem. There's always a time problem. You have to balance that. You have to really weigh that, as to whether or not it's going to be, beneficial if you can make your day and still have these kind of experiments to do. I try to do it whenever possible. But if it's impossible, I might say, we're so out of time, we just got to shoot this and move on. But, please give me more input. I'm always open to that. And the other thing that I learned that was really valuable, another thing that my dad told me is that a lot of times you get into discussion about, like with the cinematographer, about the way to shoot it. Like, well, we could do this and move the camera there and there, and we have all this discussion going on. And my dad would say these 2 words, and it will save you an incredible amount of time. Show me, just show me what you mean. Get on the camera and show me. And right away, because it's so hard to conceptualize some of this stuff. Everybody's got so many things. Your director's got so much stuff going on in their mind. I can't quite, imagine what the guy's talking about. Or an actor, same thing. Just show me what you have in mind. Just show me what you mean. Because then I can say, "Oh, yeah, of course, do that. I'm all for that." Or, that won't work, and here's why I'm concerned about that. It may not work. So, these are the things that you learn just from experience, just the experience of directing. And these are the things that a lot of which I learned from my father based on his experience, and I had the benefit of his experience.
Oh gosh, I have to ask this because you made me think of EOS. Did you or your dad ever talk about? Because he should have, he was there. Trials and Tribulations when they made that on DS9. Did y'all ever see that episode? Or
Yeah.
I was just curious what y'all thought. What you thought of it? I mean,
What I thought of it?
Yeah,
Freaking brilliant.
yeah. When you were talking about cinematographers, it made me think of Jonathan West because he directed it, and he's was a DP for so long, a director of photography. So I was like, it just made me think about that one. I was like,
yeah. No, it's a particularly great episode. I think it was just brilliant the way they they put those two. That's where they go back in time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, to the Tribbles episode, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I thought it was great. I loved it. I loved it when they do stuff like that. I mean, everybody was fabulous in that show.
Oh yeah.
And that they had the technology to be able to do that was amazing. And That's one of my favorite DS9 episodes. So yeah, I love the way they did that.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm sorry. I
We
just,
use a clip of it in the documentary. There's a clip of it in there.
uh-huh.
You know,
Well, and anyway, we can talk about that forever. I don't want
I've got a quick question. I don't know, since we brought up Deep Space Nine, I read somewhere that you were on set shadowing the director for Emissary. Is that true?
well, yeah, only part of the time. You know, it was
Okay.
David Carson who it
Yeah.
was the pilot episode.
Yes.
Yeah, I was on part of the time. I mean, the other part I think it may have been overlapping when I was working on the Next Generation, or I was
Mhm.
really still observing on the Next Generation.
to.
I think I watched some of it, but
Mhm.
not much. But it was
Okay.
David Carson's episode,
Yeah.
and David was one of my, what was a mentor
Mhm.
to me through much of the TNG period. When see, this was the deal. Rick Berman was like, "Hey, you can direct an episode, but you got to watch how they do it. How we
Yeah.
do it on this show for a season." I was on there for an entire season, and one of
Wow.
their most common guest directors was David Carson,
Okay.
and he was kind
Mhm.
enough to take me under his wing because I
Mhm.
loved his process. He's a
Okay.
guy who taught me a lot about filmmaking. I
Mhm.
mean, I learned
Mhm.
a lot from him about how to prep these shows because David had a very specific way of doing things.
Mhm.
He was very prepared. He was just a fabulous guy and a fabulous director. And a lot of my prep technique was also it was molded basically by two people, which was Leonard Nimoy and David Carson. So
Okay.
yeah, so
Awesome.
because of that, I would go up and show up. But a lot of times I had to leave them alone because they had
Mhm.
there were so many issues creating that show, getting it off the ground, and
Mhm.
and afterwards, David would tell me, these are the kind of problems that we ran into
Yeah.
that we didn't anticipate. So I learned a lot from him in retrospect after they had
Mhm.
finished that show.
Okay,
Cool.
cool. Yeah,
Cool.
Deep Space Nine's my favorite Star Trek, as you
Mhm.
might be able to tell, because I got Cisco right there.
Yeah, I see
So
Cisco
when I
right behind you. Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Awesome.
like, "Oh, you got to be there, at least for a little bit on that pilot episode." That is just amazing to be a fly on the wall for a pilot for a brand new Star Trek show, especially with that set. Had to be so cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big experiment for them. And I mean, and there were there were a lot of issues. There was a lot of new challenges
Mhm.
because they weren't going anywhere. They
Yeah,
were on the space station the whole
Yeah,
time. There's no
exactly.
move, there's no travel. And they started to get away from that in later seasons.
mhm, yeah. When
Cool.
we got the Defiant, yeah.
Yeah, they got to define.
Exactly.
Well, Adam, again, I thank you for doing this. And I have my last question, and it's the same one I asked everybody, and that is, what Star Trek technology do you wish existed today?
Oh man, just the transporter room. I mean, if there's any way to beat the LA traffic, it's just the transporter room. I can't
Awesome.
stand LA traffic.
Ooh.
Just beam me over to downtown, or to the east side of LA, or to the San Fernando Valley. If we could just do that, or anywhere. I mean, the 405 is a nightmare. I love the transporter room.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for answering that. And again, thank you for coming on and talking to us. I know we talked a little bit about everything. We got about our Star Trek 4 and everything in your books, but this has been great. This is
Thank you.
like a dream come true to get to talk to you and just learn all this. Anyway. All right. Thank you again. And everybody have a
Live long and prosper.
prosper. All
All
right.
right, you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For as little as $5 per month, you can gain early access to the full ad-free versions of all interviews, plus additional exclusive content by joining Patreon.